So welcome aboard. My name again is Crystal. I am the Center for Academic Success Director at Los Angeles Pierce College. That's our tutoring center in Los Angeles. I'm also a coordinator for the California Community Colleges Success Network, known as 3CSN. And that is a statewide professional learning organization that helps create spaces like this where people can come together and learn from each other, take back wonderful practices to our institutions and help our students thrive and succeed. So every Friday, 3CSN turns into a learning assistance party. So every Friday from 3 to 4:30, we highlight another learning assistance practice, and learning assistants can be SI leaders, tutors, mentors, embedded tutors, general tutors. And we have all kinds of folks coming and presenting and sharing their successes. We have peer educators, faculty, staff, all kinds of folks coming. So we're so happy that you're here. I see a lot of returning folks and a couple of new names, which is really wonderful. Today, we have an amazing panel of 6 peer educators from Chaffey College who are going to come and talk to us a little bit about how we stay current in our field and how to be awesome with our 21st century technology. So I'm going to turn it over to them. And they're going to introduce themselves and they're going to be awesome with us. Now, we understand that some of you have to leave at 4 o'clock. And if that's the case, that's great. I'll just post some things in the chat. But if you want to stay until 4:30, we should have some pretty awesome discussions as well. So Chaffey College, take it away.
Hi, folks. Welcome to our presentation on 21st century skills. Just call me Mayfield. I use she, her pronouns, and then there's going to be like a million of us that are going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. So I'm a discipline lead, largely for the humanities. I SI for history, specifically US history and philosophy.
Howdy, I'm Joey. I'm the program assistant. I go by he, him, and yeah, I'm just kind of the general program assistant for the program overall, but I used to SI for mathematics.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tyler. I am currently one of the discipline leads at Chaffey College for mathematics, specifically social science statistics.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean. I'm discipline lead for STEM sciences, and I also SI for chemistry and physics.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm a discipline lead as well for mathematics, and I SI for college algebra.
Well, my name is Omar. I'm also a discipline lead, and my discipline is mathematics, up and down.
All right, and we also have Yamilet here as a contributor to our presentation. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today, but she is another discipline lead who SIs for Spanish and mathematics. So very versatile right there. Okay, so a few community guidelines before we head on into it. So I guess keep yourself muted unless you'd like to speak. Of course, raise your hand, share in the chat. Since I'm screen sharing right now, all those functions are right at the top. And I think that means that the reactions are up there too. So we do love to see those reactions as well. We're going to be doing a lot of activities today as well. So share to your comfort levels. Ask permission before sharing others' experiences, since we will have a share out portion in addition to all the other fun stuff that we have planned. If you are unable to participate in the breakouts, however, just let Lindsay know. They're there to help us out, and we greatly appreciate it. So thank you, Lindsay. Main session will be from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. with the discussion portion from 4 p.m. to 4:30. So we do hope you get a chance to join us for that as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started as I figure out how to use Google Slides. Okay, so before we get into the meat and potatoes, what are 21st century skills just as like a concept? For the most part, they are transferable skills relative to the modern world that we live in. They are necessary, versatile skills to be successful in a professional, academic, or personal environments. So they're things that we can basically use in any facets of our lives, and things that we would ideally learn in a more educational setting or an academic setting. But sometimes, I mean, when we're in like the main course, as funny as it sounds, sorry, the main course, we tend to get lost in a lot of the details and forget about all of those amazing strategies that we extract from that particular class or subject. So a little bit of context, the reason why we started incorporating 21st century skills into our program, it was actually from the growing pains of having to transition within the into quarantine. We were still sort of working out the kinks with reconnecting with a lot of our SI leaders, as well as reconnecting with a lot of our students in an online format. And very much so, like how our students were in survival mode, a lot of our SI leaders were in survival mode. And one of the student learning outcomes that we have within our program that was so important to our sessions were fostering independent learning for student success. And that in some ways got a little lost in translation when we started falling back essentially to a lot of like memorization sort of activities where those could be useful, yes, but they don't contribute to like the long-term goals of having to actually be able to transfer those skills that you learn in a particular class into either another class or into a career or into your day-to-day life. So here are 21st century skills. We have adaptability, analysis solution mindset, collaboration, communication, digital fluency, empathy, entrepreneurial mindset, resilience, and social and diversity awareness. And I will put that in the chat in just a moment, a PDF that will also include the main definitions of each of those skills. And from here on out, I will give it to Joey Sanchez. Take it away, Joey.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you. So now what we're going to do, and as that PDF gets dropped into the chat, you'll be able to look more in depth at all of these. I'm also going to pop a little Excel spreadsheet in the chat. Let me do this. There it goes. And that's mainly just to give you kind of like a visual read of what that's like. I'll share my screen here. If you can't open that, there we go. And let me zoom in a little bit. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those 21st century skills, and a little PDF was just dropped in the chat. Thank you, Mayfield. And what I'd like for you to do is to kind of look through the list and look through what they're about. Some of these are a little like self-explanatory in their name. Some of them you can look through the PDF and get like a little clearer idea of what they're about. But what we'd like for you to do is to kind of come up with where you see these skills applying in each of these sections, right? So for adaptability in school, like where do you see that coming into play in your schooling experience and education experience? It could be as a learner, it could be as an instructor if you do that, it can be anything involving education. And then you would go over here and where you see it in adaptability in a career path being like a valuable skill to have, and so on and so forth with the rest of them, and the same thing in the life tab. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you about, say, like three minutes or so to kind of come up with as many of these as you can. Ideally, you could have like maybe one in each of these tabs, or just one thing for each of these. And then at the end of those 3 minutes, I'll probably have you pop some of your ideas into the chat so that everyone can kind of copy and paste them back onto their own list. Does that make sense? Are there any questions regarding what we're doing here? Can I clarify anything? All right. From what I can see, it looks all good. So go ahead and we'll give you 3 minutes. Go ahead and start just writing some of those down and see if you can get some ideas there. And I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share.
All right, awesome. Cool. Just I know my iPad is like at 1%, so I'm sorry if I just disappear out of nowhere. But now we're going to share out all of our awesome ideas. So we'll just go around the room, thinking just a round robin. Whoever wants to share, go for it. All right.
Well, I will say that we heard about Mayfield's before she went out, so I think that Mayfield should kick it off while other people find their voice.
Mine, huh? So the one that I came up with is one that it's from what is it? It utilizes self-awareness, and it's called Famous Last Words, and it's where I have students say the last 4 words of their notes, and it's a judgment-free zone. So like if they're a little behind in the work, that's totally fine. I forgot to specify that in my group, but after that, like they'll share it, and then the other listeners are supposed to guess the context of the notes. And then after that, we'll usually share out strategies that help ourselves and see if like we might be able to pick up some tips from others. Cameron, what's up?
Oh no, I was just talking. I was waiting for. I had another skill thing that I talked about. I'm not trying to interrupt yours.
Oh no, you're good. I was so excited to hear what you had to say. I still
So
am.
one of the things we talked about was like for modeling activities would do like role playing. We do this a lot in like the Center for Academic Success and 3CSN activities, where we give like a role play scenario where we figure out a student comes in with a problem, be it they're having an internet issue, they don't understand how to operate the Canvas shell, they're having issues accessing the library page, and like we play that scenario out, and we kind of show how we would help a student in that scenario with the tutors. And then one person does it, one person tutor, one person's the student, and the other person is the observer, and the observer makes notes back about that. And I feel like that activity is really great because like in that situation, the observer can be like, I saw you did this strategy. Let me give you kudos to this. Here's something I do as well. And so then it creates this dialogue between 3 people about how one can handle one of these technological based or situational based issues, which I think really helps tutors understand how to help each other and help students that come in, because technical issues are common. Like I've had countless students come in and tell me, I don't know how to access the Canvas shell. And so I screen share my screen and I go step by step on how you do this thing or that thing, or take a task or post a discussion thing on Canvas. So having tutors practice that actually really helps. And then discussing that really helps with understanding these skills and utilizing these skills, because you're collaborating, you're communicating, you're analyzing, like you're hitting multiple aspects by doing these activities.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Having an observer in a room, be able to bounce off ideas from each other, going from there is great. All right. You have anyone else who wants to share there? All right. Take it away.
I'm a history tutor, and as I told Crystal when I interviewed for the position, I believe that you have to know history so that we as a society and as individual, we need to know our past so we know where we're going and why we're where we are now. So one of the things that I do with students when they come to tutoring is do an empathy activity, because there's a lot of events and people in history that is really hard to understand why or how things happen or why they did things. So we do an activity where both of us, because I model it, that pick an event or person. World War II, you could use like the Japanese kamikaze, fighters, flyers and fighters. Why would they give up their life for their country? And so it gives an insight of, even though you wouldn't do that behavior or you can't at first understand it, it gives insight to understand why that particular event happened in history.
You shared that in our group, and I loved it. Trying to put yourself in a different point of view or perspective to understand something different than you goes a long way, even outside of academics. All right, got time for 1 to 2 more, and then we shall transition, unless we have the need to keep on sharing. Ani, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm a lead peer mentor at GCC Glendale Community College, and I would like to share. I would like to talk about empathy too, because that's something it's not an activity I do with my students. It's something I practice with myself to be mindful about everything I talk to my students about, because I'm not just showing them the way to the sources or resources or whatever, but I will also want to be mindful about my responses, because I don't know what kind of situations my students are dealing with, what's happening in their lives, and I want to be empathetic about them, to have the ability to understand and share their feelings. Because in the United States, it's very different. In my country, everybody are the same. They are from the same culture, from the same religion, and everything is the same. The language is the same. But when you come to the United States, you have to be very mindful, because maybe something is acceptable in your culture, but it's totally not acceptable when you are trying to implement it here in the United States in your workplace. So I try to be empathetic with my students all the time, because students are being vulnerable. They are sharing their stories. They are sharing about the challenges they have. And I became very grateful for that. I appreciate it, because when they are vulnerable, they are being brave and they seek help. So you have to be there to support them. And I love how Brené Brown talks about vulnerability all the time, because when you're vulnerable, people may think that you are weak, but actually it's the opposite. You are being strong. You are trying to change your life. You are trying to change, because I'm a CalWork student and I work with CalWork students. So you are trying to change not just your life, but the lives of your children. So it's a very fine line, and you have to be present and empathetic all the time during your working process.
Yes, absolutely. I love that so much. Thank you, Ani. Because when we think about equitable education, we think about the classroom, but it transcends that, right? Across all of our services, and it comes with that background of empathy, trying to understand the other people and a shared perspective. It might be different, and trying to bridge the gap. That's amazing. Thank you. And I'm gonna go to Eddie.
Well, I just wanted to mention a few things, some of the skills that caught my mind. One of them was in concordance with what Ani was talking about, which is, I know she was mentioning empathy, but I think that connects really well with social and diversity awareness, because I was mentioning in my group that, there's been a lot of things going on, especially in relation to human rights. Within the last year or two, we see the implementation of Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate. So I think it's really important to be able to educate students in those things to bring awareness, because a lot of the times people really just aren't aware, along with maybe also being uneducated, maybe miseducated. But I think awareness is a big deal, especially bringing light to those things, because as Ani mentioned, the United States is accumulation of a lot of different cultures, a lot of different backgrounds, and it's really important to acknowledge that. And then I also want to mention, I think something that really caught my eye was digital fluency, because I feel like that's something that really captures the 21st century skill. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, 21st century is a mix of a bunch of different things, but something that is very prominent in 21st century is definitely technology. We see computers, we see tablets, smartphones, especially with online learning now, and a lot of schools and the pandemic affecting a lot of schools in that way. I think it's really important, especially that part that says, let me bring it up real quick. Know how to use online resources to find information. I feel like that part is really important, because a lot of times the answers are there. People just don't really know how to navigate, don't know how to find them. And so I think that part's really important. That's something that really stuck out to me, and I just wanted to share those. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing. That made a lot of great points, especially about that the earlier points on social diversity and awareness, talking about Black Lives Matter, Asian hate, talking about those needs that are outside of academic. Thinking about our awareness before we can focus on what's happening academically, and digital fluency. Because the shift to online, we thought that maybe it would have eased issues of equity, but people didn't have the same resources, so it just compounded those across. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And if we have we have time for one more before we transition, if anyone else would like to share. These all have been fantastic points.
Share. I guess I just realized, I had a moment of realization that this, I guess, is also pretty timely with COVID and everything. And so I kind of went under the categories of resilience and empathy. So I work with students with disabilities, and right now with how fluid everything is and the incredible lack of certainty there is, a lot of my students are struggling with the constant changing and kind of like the disappointments. A lot of them are first-time freshmen, so they expected to go to university, they expected to graduate high school in person. And so the activity that I wanted to do was around this idea of planned happenstance, which is basically planning for things that are not planned, like things going wrong. And so kind of trying to capitalize and find opportunities when things don't go the way we expected. And so kind of like being able to share our stories with one another, and then trying to also find solutions to the big emotions that come from things not going right. Like kind of collaborating on like, how do I take care of myself when I'm incredibly disappointed, when I'm incredibly frustrated, when I feel like my whole world's falling apart, which I know sounds very exaggerated, but for some students that I work with, that's really real to them. So yeah, I wanted to do something around like helping them plan when things don't go well, because some of them are very find it very challenging to go outside of just what they're thinking about in that moment.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. Because that's the story of life, right? I've had this plan and none of it came to fruition. Now it's time to adapt. Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you for everyone else sharing your activities and insights on our 21st century skills. Now I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Ashley and Ty.
Hi, everyone. Okay, we're almost there. Hang with us. Mayfield, if you could do me a huge favor and share your screen one more time of our 21st century skills, that would be so very helpful. Our last activity for the day is going to be to look over those 21st century skills one more time and identify which of these skills you recognize to be lower on your scale, something that you would really like to improve on or grow on in this specific skill. So the weaker on your list, and we're going to figure out how to make that into a strong one as well.
We could probably talk more about the points of improvement in the discussion. That would be awesome. Because your girl needs some advice.
All right. Oh, good. I unfroze just in time. All right. So it is now 4:01. We're going to transition into the discussion. We do get that some people will need to leave. So if you need to leave, we're putting some links in the chat. One link is to apply to facilitate a workshop like this in the spring 2022. The second link is to give us some feedback, super important for us for funding and for continuing all of this good work. And then the third link is to join more workshops like this. So I don't want to linger. It's all you. We're going to continue on with the discussion, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming if you need to leave. And thank you so much to the Chafee team for facilitating and continuing to facilitate this wonderful conversation. All right, keep going as you see fit.
Ooh, oh, that's a good one as well. It can be really hard to stick to some like daily lists that we have because we just feel so tired one day, or we're just like, oh man, like it's only Wednesday. Like, what am I supposed to do on a Wednesday? But I totally feel that.
That's almost my weekly. For me, it's a Thursday. By Thursday, I just like forget the list. It can only
like it's not Friday yet, so I mean, I don't know.
I actually completed an appointment book for the first time ever. You know what an appointment book is? It's those daily planners that plan out
Yep.
every hour of every day.
Yes. Honestly, I can relate there with you, Mayfield. I actually filled out an entire planner for once in my life and actually like didn't miss a page. And I was so shocked. I was like, I didn't do this in college. I didn't do it in high school. And like all of a sudden now, like I'm out of both. And I'm like organizing my day, planning my appointments, planning work stuff. I'm like, okay.
So would anyone like to, would anyone still here like to share like their points of improvement, or do we want to talk about something else with regards to 21st century activities and how to implement them in your tutoring strategies or your sessions or anything like that?
I think Eddie has something.
Aye.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to like switch between the screen and the PDF and it just like wasn't going. So that's why I was like,
You're fine.
but yeah, so I was just gonna mention, I think Omar made a really good point. That's something that like resonated with me. I mean, everyone made good points, but that's something that like, specifically connected to me. I feel like the point of like getting knocked down and getting back on your feet is kind of like really hard, especially that specific part of resilience, at least. Yeah, when bounce back when things go wrong. So I feel like that's something that really resonates with me, because I feel like sometimes when I get knocked down, it is kind of hard to get up. And then also there was another part, let me see, I think it was in, oh man, I'm losing it. I don't know where it is, but it was something about managing stress in a positive manner. That's what I remember. Oh, right there, adaptability, handle stress in a positive way at the end of that. Like that's something that really really hit me, because I definitely need to learn how to manage that better, because when I get stressed, like it sticks with me. Like that's the only thing I can think of. It causes my judgment. Like it's a bunch of negative stuff. My hair falls out. So it's real bad. But those are some of the things that I feel like I can work on, and I'm sure others can relate. But yeah, those are just some of the points I wanted to mention.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Eddie, and being so vulnerable with us. I really appreciate it. I think that's definitely something we can all relate to. Is just that stress and like beating ourselves up over it. But it's always good to also focus on, something positive that happened. Like, okay, let's just say you had a horrible day. Like yesterday, I had a bad day, but you know what? I went out to lunch and I got a sandwich, and I was like, this is the best sandwich of my life right now. And it was just like, it was such a positive moment. Like it made my day so much better. So just focusing on something, even the smallest thing, turning your day around, I think would be super helpful. Or just like having a stranger say hi to you, or you saying hi to a stranger, just like, hey, how's it going? I don't know. It's a positive thing. It can definitely, the smallest things can definitely turn our day around. Most definitely.
Lindsay, did
Hi.
you have some? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say thank you. That was all. Thanks.
Ty, would you be willing to share your Pay It Forward challenge that you did in your sessions? Speaking of encouraging empathy in sessions.
Sure. Yeah. So I went ahead and created a discussion board for my students, and I shared it with them in my sessions. And I said, you have 2 weeks to do this Pay It Forward challenge. And we usually are introducing new resources and new campus resources or community resources with our students in sessions. But I just felt like I really wanted to mix it up, and I wanted my students to actually be the resource instead of just going to a resource. So I challenged them to do a Pay It Forward challenge where they go out and they give a stranger a compliment. They help a stranger. The usual Pay It Forward of, buying that person behind you not the person, buying that person's food or drink behind you in a drive-through or something. But I understand, there was financial aspects. As college students, it can be kind of difficult, which is why I introduced, throw a comment to someone or help someone pick something up. And I ended up getting 15 students to participate. And it was so awesome, just allowing my students to be that resource and allowing them to give back to their own communities. And it was just a moment of empathy for everybody to kind of read through that discussion board and like feel inspired to go out there and be that resource. So it was really awesome. If you guys are up to it, I definitely recommend it. It was a really cool experience, and you have to do it too, because you can't tell your students to do something if you're not going to do it. All right. Looks like Joey and Ani, I think you have your hands up.
Yeah, just wanted to briefly. Just wanted to briefly touch on oh, sorry.
Ooh, spooky.
Yeah, there we go. Just wanted to briefly touch on what Megan had mentioned in the chat about how these can be highlighted in sessions. First, I'll thank Cameron there letting me share one of the things we talked about. I direct messaged them in our breakout rooms was how during kind of when a student comes up, right, and particularly in the context we were talking about, like an English second language, an ESL student would come up and they were talking about how they may ask a question regarding like Canvas shell and how really in sessions, you know, it doesn't have to be. It's great when you're able to run like a full activity and do that. But if you're a tutor or in another kind of type of position where people may just come and ask general questions, you can highlight it by showing it and modeling it. So they would model like the digital fluency level of like, here's how to go through Canvas, and simultaneously model the analysis solution mindset of like, oh, what's your goal? Okay, you want to figure out how to turn a paper in on Canvas. Let's go through Canvas step by step. So that increases the digital fluency and the analysis solution mindset, and the whole act of collaborating on that and working with another student or working with the student helps stress the collaboration and the communication skills. So you can model a lot of it through just general interaction. So I thought that was a great point that Cameron had talked about, and thank you, Cameron, for letting me share that.
And Ani, did you want to share something?
Yeah, thank you. I was just wanted to mention that I totally agree with Tyler when she says that you have to give back to your community. But again, because I'm coming from different culture, sometimes I think what they will think about me. Is it appropriate to do this thing, or it can be viewed as a rude thing? For example, I don't know, I'm making this up, but maybe if I pay for something, you know, that is in the waiting with me for something they are trying to buy or whatever it is, it can be Starbucks or whatever. What if they think that I'm paying because they made an impression of not having enough money or something like that? It's very, very hard. I remember when we just came to the United States, I didn't have a car, so I walked to the grocery store with my children. And when I was coming back home, I saw that there was a homeless person, and I don't know, in my country we're giving food to homeless people, and I just took a banana from my bags and offered it to him, but he didn't like that, and I was like, oh, maybe I did something wrong, maybe I shouldn't do it. I don't know. Here there are so many cultures and you can't know everything about every culture, so it's very hard to understand what is acceptable sometimes and what is not.
Yes, I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, because yes, it's a cultural thing. There's also a labor aspect to it with regard to the pay it forward portion, and this is coming from a former Starbucks partner. The pay it forward is I'm not going to say that it's not fun. I'm also not going to say that it's a little annoying for some of the workers, but it can be weird and awkward for customers too, which was an interesting experience being someone who worked a drive-through. But yes, thank you, Megan. It would be an excellent discussion to have, like kind of like as an icebreaker that segues into that challenge, or vice versa. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you very much. Lindsay?
Yeah, so I was kind of reflecting on what Eddie said, and it made me think about a self-care activity I've been assigned to do this week, and it's around self-compassion. I think that the work that we do, we very much give ourselves to our students, and we want to have empathy for our students, and we oftentimes forget to have empathy for ourselves, to give ourselves grace and to find opportunities where we can appreciate ourselves and the work that we do. You know, inward gratitude And so I feel like it's an opportunity to think about, like, how can I be self-compassionate with all that's going on in my life, you know, all these changes, all these new assignments, or this last minute deadline in this group that I'm working with, you know. And so I think it's also really challenging because we spend so much time being empathetic outside of ourselves. And so one of my cohort mates who assigned this to us shared a resource, so I wanted to share it with you all as well. And this might be just an opportunity to think about how that empathy component can also be something that's turned inward.
Thank you very much. I'm 100% gonna use this because I mentioned earlier that empathy is actually my weakest skill. And I know that that is probably unheard of in this line of work, but I just feel on a different frequency than others. And I have a tendency to be more interested in coming up with solutions before having like that check-in. And so, yes, I really appreciate that resource. Thanks a ton. Cameron, what's up?
So on that vein of empathy, something that I often like when I talk to other tutors about like an important skill to have, I often mention empathy. And then especially in the 3CNS trainings, we often talk about this. Like, I don't know what's happening on the other side of the screen. You could be in your car, in Starbucks parking lot or whatever, on your computer just to see me because you don't have internet, you don't have the ability to access me, so you have to go through great lengths to see me. And I don't know that because you might not have the camera on, and I should not shame you for not having the camera on because it can be humiliating to have people see that you are not in your home or something. And we should not make students have to humiliate themselves. We should be empathetic to the fact that they are struggling during this very hard time and that we don't know what's happening beyond the camera. We don't know if they have stable internet. We don't know if they're in a public library or at the school or in their car. We just don't know. And that it's important that when students come, that we celebrate the fact that they took the bravery and the strength to actually come to tutoring itself to say, I need help, and to try to do the best of our ability to help them and try to understand and be empathetic towards what they're going through, because they may also be sick. They may even have COVID, and they're still trying to soldier through the disease to try to just do well in school. We don't even know, there was a student I knew who was like a father with multiple children and had to work late and only had weekends, but he did not give up. He kept pushing and pushing and tried everything to be able to go through school. And that's admirable. That's something that takes a great amount of will and strength. And we should be empathetic to those kind of struggles that students often go through. Like, a lot of times you might make the assumption students are like 20-something-year-olds. That's not always the case. Sometimes they're older, sometimes they have their own kids. Sometimes there's so much happening, and we really need to be aware that we are not the focus in these sessions, that they are the focus, that we need to be empathetic to what their needs are and to what they need from us. Obviously, we're not going to cheat or anything because that's not what we're there for, but we should definitely try to understand what situations they're in and how much they're going through and how much strength it took to just come here and ask for the help they need.
You said it right. Thank you. I agree with what Cameron is saying. I think that we get so, I know as tutors, sometimes we get so tied up in the fact that the student's just coming for a particular problem or specific chapter or test they're studying for. And sometimes we forget that it's not just they don't know the information or they're struggling with information. There might be so many things going on in their lives where their attention's split. And this is the only time they can really focus on that aspect of their life, or it is a break from some of the mayhem they're dealing with at work or with their families.
Anyone else want to share out anything, maybe with regards to anything that has just been said, or any particular 21st century skills that they see embedded like within their own like tutoring strategy or SI sessions? or anything that they would like to see more of within their programs. Yeah, and as Joey said, oh, yeah, go for it, Cameron.
So one of the things, like I tutor political science, and one of the key things I have to express with students is the analytical mindset. Like, we're talking about political concepts, so we need to be able to analyze things from different viewpoints. Like, especially when we're dealing with certain, like, sometimes we deal with like really ancient, really like dark concepts like social Darwinism, and I'm like, we gotta view it like, we have to view it from how the people who wrote it were viewing it. I'm not saying it's an acceptable viewpoint at all. I'm saying to understand some of these policies, we need to go back to the mindset of the people who wrote it to understand what they were trying to say. I'm not forgiving it. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not making any kind of statement like that. But when we take a look at history or politics, we need to be able to see from multiple viewpoints what actually is happening. Why did people make the decisions that they did? As somebody just said, context matters a lot in politics and in history, because context will define why things were done in the way they were done.
Right, and as someone who supports US history and has a background in American studies, from what I could tell, I would argue that politics and history, particularly US history, are just intertwined within one another. And yeah, I mean, you're right, context does matter. And so you kind of hit, analytical analysis and solution mindset, but also social and diversity awareness, I would argue, because a lot of that informs the culture that we're in today. So yes, thank you, Cameron. I appreciate that. Crystal?
Yeah, I just really enjoy the exercise just of looking at the 21st century skills itself as a tool to facilitate that adaptability and that thoughtfulness. And I see this as a wonderful tool to use in working with peer educators to help them think about sort of what are some of the best ways to keep themselves open and work with students. I'm also wondering, so is this something that you use in tutor training, and is this something that you use with students? And I was just wondering if somebody could speak a little bit to the different contexts in which this particular tool has been used, because I'd love to use it. And so if anybody has any tips on maybe some different contexts therein, I would love to hear that.
Right. So this is actually, I'm really glad you asked that, because this is actually something that I forgot to include. This gets incorporated within our student, like, I think it's like student objectives for our session plan. So it basically frames, what students will learn by the end of this session and how they will learn it. And so we'll try to like recycle them out every once in a while. Maybe they'll have like a bunch that hit the same 21st century skills. It's truly the way that we reinforce fostering that independent learning. And Megan, did you want to add something to that? You look ready.
Trying to remember why I raised my hand in the first place, because I got distracted. But yeah, so this is definitely something that we, it's just kind of an awareness. I think it's important in tutor training and peer educator training, because a lot of this stuff, like stuff with affective domain or sense of belonging, a lot of times the strategies are already there, just kind of baked into what our peer educators are doing, but kind of giving it a name and a context is really helpful, because also it can highlight areas that maybe they're not focusing on quite as much. And so this is something that we go over in training, and then also like I think Mayfield was saying, in our session plans every week, we're identifying like what 21st century skills did we hit. And I also wanted to add to Crystal's note about sharing this with, that's what I raised my hand for, about sharing this with students. Chafee has integrated these 21st century skills into kind of our institutional values and goals. And so this is something that faculty are being trained on, that students are learning in the classroom, hopefully. as well as in their sessions. And so a lot of this was actually born of kind of feedback from employers in the area on what they would like to see from recent graduates that maybe they're not seeing as much of. And so one thing that I encourage the SI leaders to do is sort of share that with the students and talk about just like that opening activity of like, why is this important, right? Is this just something that's going to help me in school? Absolutely. But also this stuff matters when you're out in the world and you're trying to get a job or you're trying to communicate with people. These things matter because I really believe in kind of pulling back the curtain and not trying to like trick students, like sneaky get some skill. It's like, no, talk about, hey, we're talking about this because I really, I want to help with, learning an entrepreneurial mindset. And this is why that's important, right? And that can also help with one of the biggest issues that we face, which is students being like, why are we talking about this squishy crap, right? Like, why I came here for help with math. Why are we talking about this stuff? And just kind of giving them that context of like, hey, this is a thing, it's going to help you learn, but also these are the kinds of things that employers are looking for. That way we kind of get their investment instead of them feeling like, well, I came here for one thing and you're giving me another and I don't understand why.
Thank you so much, Megan. Did anybody want to add anything to that before we before Ani shares? All right, Ani, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's just a little bit difficult for me because you talk about tutoring, but I go back and tie everything to my position as a student worker, as a peer mentor, and I think, okay, how I interact with my students, what I want to see. And I was thinking that as a 21st century skill, I would like to see empowerment because most of my students are students who are mothers. We don't have lots of male students because well, there are different reasons for that and I don't want to go deep into that, but I would like to see empowerment, and by seeing empowerment I would like to see representatives of minority groups that have higher positions. We have lots of teachers, but directors and presidents are mostly male students and male representatives. So we see lots of positions that kind of were designed for dominant groups and lots of positions that like, okay, teacher is something that females do, teaching is something females do, but presidents are usually males and usually white men. So I talk about white man supremacy a lot, and it's because I'm sure that white men can't understand my struggles because they weren't been in my position. So I would really like to see empowerment in our students, and so they don't think that, okay, if I'm a female of color, if I'm a single mother and lots of other reasons, I can't be empowered and I can't dream or I can't set goals for myself to go higher. And minority groups, who are actually the majority of people, need to see this empowerment by example. So you have to empower them by showing your example. So every time I talk to my students, and culturally being a single mother is not something you are proud of, because even your family is not supporting you when you are deciding about divorce or whatever can lead to that. And at first place, it was very hard for me to talk about myself being a single mother, but now I talk about it with my students and I tell them that I'm a single mother and I could do this, so you can do that too. So obstacles shouldn't stop us from empowering ourselves, and if we are not empowered, we can't empower others too. Thank you for listening to me, and sometimes you may lose track of what am I saying, because I'm an English learner too, and English is my third language. So I'm trying to be more clear what I'm saying. But I'm not saying that if we have a white president who is male is bad. But why don't we have presidents who are females and they are representing female that are female of color, if I say it right, I don't know, woman of color or whatever. So I would like to see diversity more than I see in the United States.
Right, thank you. Yeah, so you hit on actually quite a few different things that are worth like reiterating, right? I mean, within our sessions and really within just our work, right? Just all of our labor, we're with regards to like empowerment, I'd like to think that by incorporating these 21st century skills, depending on the way that we do them, I'd like to think that empowerment comes with, I mean, it kind of comes with that plan, right? Or with that method, whether it be, you know, collaborating with people who are different than us and being empathetic to people who don't have the same experiences as we do. And perhaps even learning something about different cultures through the social and diversity awareness, different cultures, different experiences, different backgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, you also hit on this concept of adaptability and resilience, of being able to take the experience that you do have and just running with it and thriving with it. So yes, I do really appreciate you being vulnerable with us and sharing that. Thank you very much, Megan.
Yeah, I was just going to say that a lot of this, you know, when we talk about, like, obviously, most of our peer education programs are training their peer educators, their tutors, and their SI leaders on things like diversity awareness and things like that. What I love about thinking about these 21st century skills for students is that we're not just using the diversity and social awareness skills that we have to work with them. It's, again, pulling that curtain back and teaching them those skills, right? Because it's not enough for us just to bring those skills into session. It's also like really name checking that idea that, like, as a student, you need to learn this too, because this is going to help you to be successful in school, in work, in your community, you know, things like that. And so that's why I love these 21st century skills, because they're really sort of two-part, right? It's like, these are the things we want to train our peer educators to be focusing on in session, and so they need to strengthen those skills for themselves, but also it's about telling the students, we need to strengthen, I'm going to help you strengthen these skills. And that's, I mean, it's what we used to call like successful student strategies or transferable skills or things like that, that kind of transcend discipline in class. So it's like, this is not just going to help you to be successful in this class, this is what you need to be successful in all of your classes. So I love everybody, everybody sharing. It's just so wonderful to hear.
Thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate your time and the wonderful space that we created. You all had some really wonderful ideas and shares, and we just appreciate that incredibly. Thank you to the plethora of our presenters today. In the chat, we do have the call for proposals, the feedback link, and the workshops. So I encourage you all to, if you're interested in doing something like this again, to click that workshop link. There are plenty of workshops that go over a bunch of different things from the wonderful expertise across the state. If you loved this session, please provide some feedbacks on how that went. And then if this is something you want to do, definitely click that call for proposal and send in a proposal, and you will be mentored and supported. And hopefully you'll get to present next semester. So thank you all. It is 4:33, so thanks for that extra 3 minutes. We appreciate it. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday and a lovely, lovely weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.